I was standing at my mailbox early one morning when I didn't catch the familiar scent of fresh coffee and warm pastries I usually counted on my way to work. Inside was a single, plain white envelope, sealed with some rubbery strip. I pinched its corners, listening to the paper rustle. Bills or flyers were normal, never this. I went back inside, tossed my tangled keys and butter knife onto the kitchen counter, and slit the top of the envelope. Inside was a photo. My wife, Emily, laughing with another man at a Starbucks table. That smile wasn't the one I woke up to every day. A lump rose in my throat, my heart pounded, and for a moment I forgot to breathe. I held the picture under the lamp's glow, every pixel feeling like an accusation. Who sent this? One of our friends who knew about her fling? A relative who had to cleanse their conscience? Or her lover, sick of her doubts, afraid I'd discover the truth myself? I placed the photo in front of my computer, where the email icon blinked at me. See what's really going on. I worked at a small marketing agency where every Thursday we took break time together in the common room. Usually I'd grab coffee with Michael, my best friend since college, but right then my head was spinning too fast for any casual chat about new campaigns. I messaged Michael, "Need help. Call me when you can." No reply. I remembered how Emily sometimes lingered after Sunday services at our church, or took forever at her friend Jessica's wine tastings, or at charity auctions. I'd always chalked it up to church duties or volunteering, but this photo suggested something else. I replayed her story about going to that modern art show where she met a photographer named David. Was it coincidence or something more? That evening, as dusk settled over the city, I sat down at my laptop. I scrolled through David's Instagram, checked his Facebook. Nothing odd. Friends, family gatherings, his dog on walks. I slammed the browser shut, checked my inbox again. No privacy policy clues, but that washi tape on the envelope was too neat for a random mail carrier. I wanted to call Michael again, but still no signal. I dialed Emily, but she said she was at the college organizing a child psychology lecture and hung up as a taxi pulled up. I began to feel I was part of someone's sick game. Watched at every step, my phone tapped, my calls recorded. Or maybe I was just losing my mind from loneliness and fear of betrayal. But I knew, to untangle this mess, I'd have to gather evidence, line up every clue, and talk to everyone we knew. Only then could I find out who decided to shake my world with a shameful photo in an anonymous envelope. I decided to start close to home by calling Jessica. We'd met at a school fair, and she was the kind of friend who'd spill everything, even if she knew nothing. "Hey Jess, have you heard anything weird going on with our church group?" I asked. Her voice wavered. "I don't know, man. Maybe you're just overthinking." Then she sighed. "Okay, maybe you mean that photo in the envelope? I heard someone mention there was drama in the congregation, but I don't know details." And she hung up. Her reluctance felt deeper than piety. Curiosity gnawed at me, so I drove over to her place. Maybe she'd accidentally seen something important. Her little vintage van was parked out front. I knocked, but only my own anxious reflection met me through the glass. No answer. I circled the house. No security cameras, no footprints in the leaves. "Damn," I muttered. Back in my car, I tried calling Michael yet again. Nothing. After a few hours, I sent him the photo link. It was relegated to my never again folder by then. His response was blunt. "Emily could have mailed it herself. You've both been distant lately. Maybe she's trying to tell you something." I tossed my phone aside and drove to that same Starbucks. I asked to see the security footage, as a customer curious about service. The barista, a girl with blue-streaked hair, hesitated but then showed me a clip. Two people laughing, leaning in close, then walking away together. I replayed it a dozen times, slowed it down, but the man's face stayed blurry. His posture held a challenge, like he felt he owned the moment. I thanked her and left, feeling my heart race faster. On my way home, I realized I'd made a mistake. Emily probably knew about my little investigation. What if she'd nudged me toward those random clues? We'd been snapping at each other for weeks, me working late, her spending more time alone. I felt like I was missing the bigger picture, and that everyone around us had become part of her plan, and I was just a pawn. I slipped quietly into our living room. On the coffee table lay her tablet. I turned it on, no password, and saw messages from David. "Thanks for coffee yesterday. When can I see you again? You said it was fine if I called. Not a casual friend check-in. Those were invitations. And then a text from Michael, be ready. My pulse shot up when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Emily appeared, eyes tense. She held the very same envelope I'd pulled from the mailbox. My chest slammed. She paused, staring at the floor, then looked me dead in the eye. You found the photo. I shoved it onto the table. Did you send this? Explain yourself. Her lips trembled. Then, yes, I sent it. I recoiled. No lover, no friend, no church member. Just her. She met my glare with cold defiance, mixed with hurt. You've changed. You don't look at me the way you used to. We're strangers now. I didn't know how to get your attention. I saw real fear in her eyes, fear of losing us. Silence filled the room, sharper than any confession. I covered my mouth with my hands, realizing all my spying, all my accusations was her desperate attempt to jolt our marriage. In that instant, I understood that love is not just about trust, but about acknowledging each other's pain without pushing each other to extremes. My hand trembled as I wrapped my arms around her shoulders. I was afraid you'd betray me, but you were afraid I'd lose you. That night, I couldn't sleep. Face down on the pillow, I listened to the soft drip of the air conditioner, proof even the smallest rhythms can hold you steady. Morning came early. I woke to Emily in the kitchen, brewing mint and lemon balm tea, her hair loose, a little mussed from sleep. She smiled, held out a cup with a tiny hummingbird painted on it. New year, new me, she joked, but in her voice was hope, not sarcasm. I sat down, took her hand, and felt the last tension in my body melt away. We sipped tea in silence, looking into each other's eyes. A month ago, I'd opened that anonymous letter, and every message since had felt like an explosion. In just those 4 weeks, we'd gone from roommates on parallel tracks to teammates ready to defend each other and face our fears together. Without that crisis, we might still wander past one another without noticing how vital simple care really is. At 8, I called work to say I'd be late. I tried opening my slide deck but shut the laptop 2 minutes later, could send it later. I slipped on the shirt I'd picked out for the charity gala yesterday, the one with that mysterious coffee stain, and asked Emily, let's just walk wherever our feet take us. She nodded and squeezed my hand. We stepped into the waking city, early commuters rushing by, cars with steamed-up windows crawling up the boulevard. We ducked into a bookstore where I bought her a new novel, then a florist where I once surprised her with daisies, her favorite because they reminded her of childhood summers in Indiana. The shop clerk recognized us and offered a discount. Looks like you're planning to surprise each other again. I grinned. Yes, we were, only this time we were building our connection, not tearing it down. Back home, I found the mail on the table. A pink envelope addressed in curly handwriting for my favorites. Inside was a lovely card from Mrs. Smith, thanking us for showing how to overcome doubt in our church and inviting us to a volunteer meetup with homemade cookies. I looked at Emily and saw that spark in her eyes again, not fear, but warmth. That evening, volunteers filled the chapel vestibule, Mrs. Smith setting out cups, John arranging the pastries, Pastor James preparing his closing words. Emily and I sat among them. When John stood, voice shaking, to apologize publicly for his part in our drama, the room fell silent. He admitted how he'd thought shock would spark honest dialogue and vowed to approach people directly with love and respect. I saw tears in many eyes, not pity, but relief. I stood afterward and talked with anyone who had questions. Many thanked us for our example. Some confessed they'd hidden truths behind jokes or hints and hurt the ones they loved. Emily squeezed my hand as I closed. Trust is fragile, but any one honest conversation can strengthen it. Don't wait to say I love you or I'm sorry. The applause felt less like an ending and more like a starting line. Walking home under the streetlights, we talked about keeping doubt from creeping back. We vowed to ask each other one question every morning. About a joy, a fear, anything. Even if it seemed small. Those daily rituals would be our shield against anonymous dramas or recycled fears. I slipped my phone under my pillow that night and stared at the ceiling. The mailbox saga felt far from over. Each new ping, photo, or delay could spark another storm. But I knew the key. To protect ourselves, we had to build an internal barrier, leaving no room for rumors or blackmail. As I lay beside Emily, her hand found mine, and we drifted into darkness, hand in hand. In the half-light of our doubts and hopes, I felt the seed of a true story. One we'd share not just with friends over coffee or church folks on Sunday, but with each other in our marriage's own storybook. And at that moment I realized, as long as we remember why we started this journey together, no anonymous envelope can tear us apart. A new day dawned with bright sunlight spilling across the bedspread and Emily's voice calling me to breakfast. I sat up, feeling a familiar thrill. Last night, I'd spun through those old messages again, but tomorrow held something new. Over omelets and toast, I sketched out a plan. No more blind detective work, no more hunting for hidden truths on screens. We'd trace those letters back to their source and shut the gossip train down for good. After coffee, I suggested we visit our church administrator, Mrs. Smith, the kind middle-aged woman who handles mailings and volunteer rosters. Maybe someone had slipped notes through her office, or maybe someone had access to the church's mailing lists. Emily agreed instantly. 30 minutes later, we were in her neat office, surrounded by family photos, ours on her shelf alongside Pastor James and his wife at our wedding. I explained, "I keep getting threatening letters and anonymous texts, and I have no idea who's behind them." Mrs. Smith frowned, pushing her glasses up. "Our systems are secure. Only a handful of us can access those lists. I checked the mail logs, nothing unusual." She added that only one other person sometimes helps her with computer issues, John, who volunteers on weekends fixing the office's aging hardware. "He's a devout man, always ready to help, but I can't imagine he'd meddle in people's private affairs," she said, visibly hurt at the thought. Stepping back outside, I felt a jolt. Every lead pointed to John, a soft-spoken 60-year-old I'd only glimpsed at charity luncheons. His handwriting on the hallway flyers was messy, childlike, but that first envelope had been sealed neatly. The picture became more tangled the more I tried to smooth it out. Emily suggested caution. Talk to John in front of someone else from the council. Keep it transparent. I agreed. The next night I invited Mrs. Smith and Pastor James to our living room. I spread copies of the messages, noted dates and times, showed screenshots. 10 minutes later, John arrived with a tray of tea and went pale when he saw those words. I began gently. "John, you sometimes help Mrs. Smith with the computer. Do you know anything about these letters?" He froze, then shook his hands like he was brushing off dirt. "I didn't mean harm. I was upset seeing you two drift apart. I thought if you saw evidence, you'd finally talk to her for real. You've been so busy I thought I could help." Mrs. Smith closed her eyes and nodded. "John, you turned a conflict into shock therapy. Shock isn't healing." I felt a mix of anger and compassion. He truly wanted to help, but chose the most destructive way. We agreed he'd publicly admit his wrongdoing and apologize to the congregation, while Emily, Mrs. Smith, Pastor James, and I would draft a message of love and forgiveness to share. To close the chapter on gossip. That evening, walking home under the newly lit street lamps, Emily hugged me tight. "Thank you for not letting it end in resentment." I smiled and whispered, "Without you, none of this made sense." I looked at John's photo, pixelated and humiliating, and realized it would always remind us not of betrayal, but of the need to truly listen. That chapter closed, leaving trust, honesty, and love in its wake. Ahead lay one final leg of our journey, and I was ready to walk it hand in hand with the woman I almost lost. That night, I struggled to sleep, the air conditioning's drip echoing the new cadence of our lives. Not suspicion and drama, but openness, care, and small rituals that once seemed mundane. Morning came early. Emily was brewing mint and lemon balm tea again, her hair tousled, her smile gentle. "New year, new me," she teased, but I heard sincere hope. I took her hand and let the last of my tensions slip away. We planned to go wherever our feet took us. An hour later, we found ourselves at a little lake we used to visit with friends, only this time we were alone. Descending the wooden steps, I placed our wedding photo in a simple frame and set it on the dock's edge. "This is our real mirror," I said. "What we've built after dark storms." Emily's eyes glistened against the water's reflection, an acknowledgement that more tests would come. Work deadlines, planning for kids, holiday gatherings ripe for rumors. But the lake's still surface spoke of calm and clarity. I squeezed her hand and whispered, "Let's do something crazy." She smiled. "Like what?" "We'll row downstream to the old lighthouse and leave this wedding picture there. symbolizing that we've forgiven the past and are sailing forward together. She nodded. In the boat, I took one oar, she the other, and we pushed off the dock. The trip was slow under the willows. Ripples trailed behind us. At a narrow bend, I knelt and held the frame over the water. Emily bent close, tears in her eyes, but tears of peaceful farewell. She tipped the frame just enough for our wedding photo to touch the water. Then she let go. The picture flipped, showing us holding hands against the sky as it drifted away. On the row back, each stroke loosened one more knot of past doubt. The photo sank, taking every last shadow of suspicion with it. In its place rose a fresh breeze. Our new life of laughter, ritual, and honest conversation. Back on shore, the evening breeze shook loose the last spring leaves. We stood hand in hand and understood that our fears and dramas had been trials, forging the true weight of trust. That weight was no burden. It became a solid foundation for what comes next. We walked home in comfortable silence, communicating without words. Passing under our porch light, I saw a new print on the table, a matte photo of that exact moment at the lighthouse, our blurred profiles in the boat, our hands linked in decision. I picked it up and showed Emily. "Looks like we have a new keepsake," I said. She laughed, took my hand and said, "It's ours forever, proof that even the darkest letters can't eclipse the light we spark in each other." Months have passed since that spring picnic, and each morning when I wake beside Emily, I think, how much we've been through. I used to believe marriage was just two people walking side by side. Now I know the real closeness comes from weathering storms together, hauling each other out and building strong anchors of trust. We've created new rituals. Sunday mornings, we cook breakfast together. Michael rolls up with his surprise pot of homemade maple syrup. Jessica brings fresh buns. We've even invited Mrs. Smith, David, and John, the same volunteer whose help shook us so deeply. Now John bakes pumpkin pie, and I brew coffee. When we all gather in our dining room, laughter drowns out the mixer, and nobody even brings up old letters. Emily started a feelings journal. Each morning she writes one happy memory from the prior day and one small joy she felt. I read her entries each night, adding my own notes about moments I loved holding her or seeing her smile. We store these pages in a box we call our collection of truths. The day I first slipped a photo from our lakeside row into it, Emily said, "Let this be our most honest promise." We even sought professional help. We joined a few sessions at Harmony Counseling with Sarah, who explained that after any betrayal, even one done in the name of saving a marriage, there are invisible scars. We needed to give them space, to speak openly about pain and fear without blame or retreat. Sarah taught us to listen for the feelings behind words, to know when to reach out and when to ask a question. Then we took a short trip to Sedona, Arizona. Amidst red rocks and wide horizons, we felt like teammates again. We hiked and told jokes. We walked in silence, simply in sync with nature. Every night back at the little wooden cabin, we lit a candle and read favorite quotes, my Twain anecdotes, her Rumi lines. Those moments were priceless. No digital screens, just living words we shared. Church changed for us too. We joined the outreach committee, planning events, raising funds for the homeless shelter, hosting book fairs for underprivileged kids. Our faith family no longer saw us as drama magnets, but partners investing in a greater cause. Pastor James told us, "Your example showed that true forgiveness isn't a word, it's a daily choice to stay together." Thank you for reminding us of that. That meant more to me than any standing ovation. One evening while cooking together, Emily placed her hand on my shoulder and smiled. "You know, I still think about that anonymous envelope, but now it's not a wound, it's a starting point. I'm grateful for it, for waking us up." I kissed her forehead and held her close. "You're right," I said. "Without it, I may never have realized how much we lose when we stop asking." We hugged and looked out the window, night wrapping our house in gentle shadows. I realized the true magic isn't avoiding any pain, but walking through it together, torch of trust in hand. There will be new tests, career changes, babies, family obligations, but I'm sure our we is unbreakable, forged in the fire of honesty. And that is the greatest gift I've ever known. Sometimes I still wake with the scent of lilacs blooming outside our window, and I'm struck by how far we've come. I know now there's no final chapter in real love, only new sunrises of trust and forgiveness. every single day.